Okay, hi everyone. It's Grant Abbott speaking. I've got Michael Jeffriess and also Chris Jones from eMoney and Michael from I Love Accounting and also Director of I Love SMSF. So welcome to a current SMSF lending landscape session. And when you have a look at it from my perspective, I remember dealing, I forget who those guys, I'm sure some of you could remind me many years ago, there was a group out there that had a lending product around 2005, 2006, but then the government came out and introduced at the same time they did Simpler Super Section 67 4A into the legislation, which allowed quite a wide scope in terms of borrowing. In those days, I remember the Royal Bank of Scotland. I'm not sure if you guys remember that. They had like an instalment warrant offering out in the market where you could put shares under a holding trust. In 2010, that switched over to Section 67A, and we focused in on single acquirable asset, which, unless you're using the Lightyear Docs platform, it generally gets too expensive to do shares and units in a unit trust. But obviously with our LOI strategists who do an unlimited and also our automation around that area, the PCG 2016/5, cost is not an issue. But we're moving more onto the property side. And look, from my perspective is, look, when it came out in 2007, we had a few of the banks there, St. George, Westpac, NAB were pretty strong. ANZ, I gave a lot of advice to at the time, and really they were not interested at all, and they sort of only put it on their platform just so they didn't lose clients to NAB and Westpac. CBA had a product, but look, it was ridiculous. You had to go through their own holding trust. They were the trustee of it, and look, it just didn't work. So it was a huge innovation. Unfortunately, the banks, really, in my belief, they drag, and I'll have a chat with the guys a bit later, they really dragged their heels on the whole thing, and probably, in fact, looking back on it, really stuffed the whole process up. Because instead of making it simple and efficient, and for those of you who've been using Lightyear Docs, we can run a whole range of documents. I was having a chat with Chris then, is that, for someone new, you can set up a corporate trustee, set up an SMSF, set up an investment strategy, then you do your holding trust, then you do, obviously, you can tap into the lending product, your investment strategy, as I said before, and then if they're going to lease it to someone, you can do a residential lease, and that can all be done in one line with all the common parties and done extremely quickly. So, but up until that point in time, you had Gaydens who were working for Westpac, and they charged like $3,000 to $4,000 to review a deed that they've reviewed 100 times before. It was just simply a money-grabbing exercise there, and I believe that really slowed down the whole process. But demand's demand. At the end of the day, people love either property or they love shares. And when you go into self-managed superannuation fund, you tend to go, well, particularly at an early age, you go down one of those two stages. You don't go in and put cash unless well, look, I don't know why you would do that, but you go in and get fully invested. And property, if you've read my blogs and articles on that if you're looking around a 40-year-old, couple of 40-year-olds setting up an SMSF, they've probably got $300,000 to $400,000 in super. When you're borrowing at a conservative rate of 60% LVR, that's up around about $1 million of capital you can utilise, and probably get a couple of investment properties in different areas. So you're doing a bit of diversification within there. And of course, we have to look at Commissioner's investment strategy stuff, but we're pretty down pat on that one. But look, with the banks pulling out probably 2 or 3 years ago, Royal Commission, I think they're really getting smashed anyway. We've seen a lot of the CEOs resign, so there's a lot of stuff in there, but that's allowed smaller players, particularly guys like Latrobe, who I know Chris does a lot with eMoney. He's got some special announcements today on a drop in rates that he's going to be talking about. But look, it has been difficult to get loans, and that's frustrated me. But we've come into this partnership with eMoney, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there going down the track. So I've got Michael. Michael, do you just want to go? I've got your resume up there. Do you just want to go through and give a bit of background there, and then I'll hand over to Mr. Chris, and he can do the same.
Will do. Thanks, Grant. So I've got about 20 odd years experience in the accounting industry. Equally, I've known Chris for, I believe, for about 20 years as well, and through friendships, sporting and other endeavours. And it's from that, I guess, relationship that I looked into about 6 months ago, started opening discussions up with Chris in relation to the SMSF lending space and where it was sitting at, and an opportunity into looking into providing a product into the marketplace that not necessarily looked at beating anyone in terms of rates or fees or anything, but certainly being market competitive, and something that that we looked at that would be able, a product or solution we'd be able to put in that provided a better process and a more efficient process for people. So that that we through I guess that partnership and relationship, that we could provide a working solution where we could proactively work with each other and get that forward. So I've got 20 years of accounting experience. I've had executive roles in listed and unlisted groups. I've listed a number of companies, also run consumer finance teams. So I've got a significant background in terms of underwriting, loan administration, and collections. And from that, I've also got a large amount of experience in outsourcing, providing offshore solutions, which is where ILA comes into a partnership with Lightyear Group. So that's a bit of my background, but I'll just hand you over to Chris now.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, so I've been working in the finance industry for just over 14 years. I've worked for a couple of the big four, as well as for broking firms, and now in the private space. So yeah, I've held all different types of roles, from commercial, residential, as well as credit manager. So I suppose now I'm in a sales role. It helps that I've got that credit background, because it helps me to see the bigger picture and help get deals across the line. So yeah, as Mick said, I've known him for a while, and I'm really excited to be on board and to help out where I can.
I think as I said, there's some pretty exciting stuff. I've talked about the history of LRBAs, and really these days, unless you're doing a related party loan, particularly around shares and stuff like that, there's no bank that will essentially touch you. So we're pretty heavily focused in on the property side, which is exciting. The market seems to be booming. It was down there for a couple of years, and now seems to be bouncing back. And look, even though there might be touches of recession, but property is going to be a long term. And as I said before, if I go back to those 40-year-olds who can build a $1 million portfolio virtually overnight, and I like to, when I go and do seminars, I call them the virtually instant SMSF millionaires. And that stands really well, because if you're 40, when you're buying that property, you're not going to realise that property until lease stage, maybe 75, 80, 85, when the underlying PVF factors, your minimum pension factors, require you to draw down upon your capital. So by that time, and I'm sure if we have a look at it, both Michael and Chris, I mean, what's generally the duration where you've seen practicalities as people have gone into an LRBA? How long does it generally, with contributions and obviously rentals, etc., how long does it generally take them to pay it down?
I'll jump in first. I mean, from my experience, I'd say on average I'm seeing around probably the 15 to up towards 20 years, but generally on average around 15 years. And that's from stuff at the coalface in terms of clients I've dealt with directly, even my own personal fund. I have an LRBA sitting in there, and I think the pay down on that's probably going to be sitting around about 11 years at the moment.
Yeah, and you, Chris, have you seen anything from your perspective at eMoney?
Yeah, I suppose from the deals I'm seeing, it would be close to the 15-year mark before we see them paid down. That's normally the life cycle we see, where either clients selling and then upgrading inside the SMSF or just paying it down quicker. So, but yeah, never any longer than 15 years from what I've seen.
And look, from my perspective, this is a really important strategy, absolutely crucial, because look, we've got ASIC coming out with lies around self-managed superannuation funds. We've got industry funds likewise doing the same. And this is one area, if they were smart enough, they'd get off their arse and they'd build their own SMSF product, they'd have their own LRBAs, but they're too lazy because they've got huge amounts of inflow of coming in, and they'll sit on their butts and just simply take that in and not have to do any innovation like we do. So, you know, from our perspective, this keeps on going down the track. Now, we all, looked at we're all in the target there when the Labor Party came in. Hopefully, apart from the bushfire crap that Morrison went through, that we've got at least another couple of terms of that. So we're going to get some good duration. But like anything, we want to make sure we're on top of this and take full advantage, because I can tell you for my daughters who are like 21 and 17, when they get to 30, 35, borrowing will be seen as the greatest thing ever. And there'll be a lot of people who got in early who would have fully paid off their loans, built up a good property portfolio and moved on from there. So LRBAs, we've got a good position. Obviously, there's a lot of people moving into property, and the Commission issued a ruling last year, or a guideline, sent out letters to trustees primarily with LRBAs talking about diversification. We moved very quickly at Lightyear Docs to ensure that was the investment strategies were beefed up for that one. So I'm not a great fan. I have had instances in the past where the Commission has signed off on 100% into property. So again, as long as you've got diversification and you've got the cash flows coming through, then you should be pretty well right. Now, going down for the clients, SMSF loans for traditional loans, looking at interest rates and fees, we'll have a look at that going through the process. So when we have a look at the lending landscape, corporate versus individual trustees. So I know that you deal a lot with La Trobe, Chris. So what do they require from a structural point of view?
Yeah, La Trobe is quite flexible. So, and the good news is, basically we'll take any trustee, whether it be individual or corporate trustee, as long as it meets your requirements, then La Trobe will be happy. So when we start the process, we don't even need the bare trust or any of the SMSF to even be set up. We can actually send it all through to start the process before that is all set up. So we often like to do that just to make sure that we can get that indicative approval set up quickly, and then we can get the documents after the fact. So we can do it either way. I mean, it sounds like that how easy it is for with Lightyear for the documents to be set up, that chances are for the accountants that are set up with you, we're going to have that all set up at the start, but we'll take it either way.
Yeah, Chris, if I just jump in for a sec, what's the sort of time frame that you tend to, or average time frame you seem to see from, I guess, getting that indicative approval through to actual settlement of the facility? Because it's, I mean, from experience, I've seen SMSF lending tends to take a little bit longer than your traditional resi or your traditional loan products. Is that what you seem?
Yeah, it is. Most of the time, the reason that it's taken a bit longer is waiting for the accountant to get the bare trust finalised. Because I suppose most of the time we need the exact loan details before you can have that all finalised. But if that's given to us quickly, we normally get indicative approval within 3 to 4 business days. Once the valuation's done, we can get formal approval within normally the same time frame, 3 to 4 business days. Once we have sent the valuation off, we get documents through. We normally use Purcells, just they're quicker and they send us digital documents. We get them same day as formal approval, and then settlement normally 14 days from when the docs go out. But we have we have escalated and got them through quicker. It's all about how quickly the clients can get their documents signed.
Well, with certainly on the light year docs side, you could basically, honestly, do it in no more than 5 or 10 minutes. You could do it whilst the auction's going on. So as soon as the auction's closed, before you pay your deposit, you would actually be able to do that documentation really quickly. Not that I'm suggesting accountants or planners you should be following your clients around an auction. But it is nice to know that you can effectively go down that process there. So we will be working on, as I said, a full automation, which will now obviously we've got what I would suggest probably going down the track is that you do a corporate trustee, so a special purpose corporate trustee or a leading member corporate trustee with a SMSF. You're doing an establishment, and then that would lead into the investment strategy, the holding trust, and then be off and running. So we've got most of that made. I've just got to test it. But once you do that, you'll take no more than 5 minutes. Get the client to sign it, and then you can send it off to Chris and the team at eMoney, which will be perfect. On that one is, I suppose, our focus is certain, secure, and compliant. You know, you can do it if you're on our system. You can put it logo in your name. Effectively, it's signed off by lawyers Abbott and Morley, who are part of the Lightyear Docs team or the Lightyear group. We do that to ensure that problems that are now faced by companies such as Now Infinity, where they've split with View Legal, and View Legal is no longer supporting the Now Infinity platform, which can create a huge legal issues that certainly I would never want to get involved in. By having that all in line, being able to move quickly with our platform, we're going to give certainty, security, and also compliance. For the regulators, we talked about the investment strategy. One of the ones there, though, is from a procedural point of view. As we see more and more younger generation coming into their parents' funds, just be careful of the parents who are already in pension phase, that with our investment strategy, you want to use a member-directed investment strategy, which enables the superannuation fund to have a separate investment strategy for 1 or 2 members. So if it was husband and wife and they've got their parents inside the fund, just have a separate investment strategy for them. And the reason we do that is the actual value of that loan. So it's the value of the asset, not the net asset, which is taken into account for T-bar purposes. So that if you've got a pooled investment strategy and you start to up the ante, some of it'll start to bleed over into the pension side and ruin your T-bar, which will require a commutation. So we want to have those little tweaks around there, but just remember, you can come to me, Grant, at ilovesmsf.com, and we can go through that, or probably better going to Michael at I Love Accounting, who's done a lot of this sort of stuff and really knows his way around. With that one, Michael, where you do have separate investment strategies, what do you do on the accounting side for that? Because obviously the P&L, the balance sheet, and everything has to be segregated and separated out. Does Class and also BGL, Simple Super, do that?
They do. Both product providers handle LRBAs and the property investment quite well, and allow you to also look at valuations on an annual basis.
Which is perfect. In fact, there's actually I don't think it's going to be a bad thing, but just for those on the side, the tax office just released a valuation, auditor's valuation guideline around units, private unit trusts that I got from you, Michael Samu, which is interesting. I think we can do that, but that's going to be separate investment strategy or separate webinar itself. But certainly if you've got property and you do your valuations, how often do you suggest people do their valuations, Mike?
They should be looking at least, they should be looking at it annually. That can be range from anything from a real estate agent's valuation up to a proper full valuation, but it tends to be just a real estate valuation is fine, it's sufficient for audit purposes.
Okay, so let's just go through the process and structure, just so we're fully transparent. You know exactly where everything is. The Lightyear Group is our head company, and underneath we've got a couple of subs, which is I Love SMSF and also Lightyear Docs. We're partnered, as we do, with quite a few people as we're going down the track, with I Love Accounting, which is primarily owned by Michael. That's there to provide services for those of you who want to offshore any accounts, etc., which will be the subject of another discussion. I might get Mike to talk about that. And eMoney's partnered up with I Love Accounting. So the Lightyear Group doesn't have any equity interest in I Love Accounting, but we see this as a valuable tool because we are getting a lot more financial planners coming on board are using our strategy. So we have to make sure that obviously the people we partner with, and of course Michael, really know how to account for a lot of this sort of stuff. So you might just want to cover I Love Accounting and the eMoney partnership there, Michael.
Yes, yep. Thanks, Grant. Look, certainly through my career, my core focus as an accountant and CFO has been on business partnerships and business partnering. And I Love Accounting brings my experience in terms of outsourcing and offshoring solutions to on a business-to-business basis. So from ILA to accountants, advisors, and other businesses, and often their businesses within those advisory, so their clients' businesses. So we can provide anything ranging from bookkeepers through to fully qualified accountants, to administration staff, planning staff for SOAs, and that can range from providing just white labeled services on a bespoke basis, or providing their own seat or seats within under our team. And I'm actually sitting over in Manila at the moment, coming from the trenches here, and been working with the Lightyear team that's been based over here all week, with our developer and our support staff. So, and so from that, I mentioned earlier, had a long-term relationship with Chris, and I also know his CEO and chairman, Steve Dover, quite well. And we opened discussions up quite some time ago in relation to bringing product or partnering, bring a product that we could provide a better solution to the marketplace for SMSF lending and other lending products as well. It's not just limited purely just to SMSF space, although this discussion is today.
So you just want to go through what Discover SMSF is, so that all our attendees are well aware of what it is and the process and how we take it through before we get to the exciting bit about the rates.
Yeah, so SMSF...
Yeah.
Jump in, Chris.
You go, Mick.
No, you go. You're fine.
Yeah. So we've got Latrobe, plus we've got a few other lenders on panel that we have access to that's under the eMoney as well as I Love Accounting brands. So we can deal with residential, commercial investment, as well as commercial, obviously owner occupied, which we see quite a lot of. Is that something you see quite a lot of as well, Mick, with commercial SMSF? For their
tends to be a lot of focus on commercial property, into larger type businesses, and certainly provides a good strategy in terms of buying your business premises and having a lease back around that.
Yeah, sure. So I suppose with the process moving forward to get access to this product, there's a link on the I Love Accounting site, which then feeds the info straight through to myself to make contact either with the accountant direct, if that's how they would like to choose, or with the client direct, and then we get permission from the client to then contact the accountant to gather the required information. So yeah, we try and make it as easy as possible. You can speak to me directly to workshop deals, even if it's just hypotheticals. We make it as easy as possible.
So apart from obviously the documentation, which can be easily done in Lightyear, from the accounting perspective, what do you need? Do you need the last set of accounts, or the last return, or the last balance sheet, or members' accounts?
Yeah, so if they're self-employed, we do need 2 years financials and returns, notice of assessments, just to look at their income. So there's a slide further on that talks about the different ways we look at servicing. If it services inside super, if it works with just the proposed rental income as well as the contributions that have been made and the remaining balance in their super fund, then we don't need to look at the individual client's asset and liabilities, because that's not required if it services inside super. So that makes it very much straightforward. And just answering that question for Michael, Samu, we do look at a 2 years average of contributions. They will consider lump sum contributions within that. And if for any reason it doesn't service based on their contributions for the 2 years, that's when we need to look at it external or outside super, where we need to look at the client's individual asset and liabilities, and if there's sufficient servicing to allow additional contributions, then we can rely on that. This is something that's quite unique to the market, because some of the other products that are on the market require minimum 12 months confirmation of contributions. So that can slow things down for people to get into the market within this self-managed super fund. So we don't need to necessarily see those contributions. We just need to make sure that it works external to the super fund, taking into consideration their personal debts, living expenses, and so forth.
Chris, where Michael's saying there that so they've effectively had a few years off work, but they've just started full-time work, but they're past their probation period. Would they consider looking at, I guess, the employment contract and the subsequent contributions that would come off the back of that employment? Yeah,
absolutely. So if they're a PAYG, then they'll even consider them on probation if it's a strong enough deal. I had a deal just recently that the male applicant had a workplace injury, and he'd had quite a substantial time off work, and he'd actually started with a new employment because of his injury, and we were able to take it from day one from his new employment, taking into consideration the 9.5% contributions.
And with where you're switching over, you're starting like a brand new fund, which is quite often the case. So you don't have a contributions history. How does that fit in?
Again, if it's a brand new fund, if they're PAYG, we just look at their income, so 2 pay slips plus PAYG payment summary to look at their income, and then we can use 9.5% of that. We don't need to see evidence that they've been paying into the new fund. If they're self-employed, that's when we need to get the 2 years financials and look at the contributions that have been made, and they sometimes, not always, will seek confirmation of their contributions made into their existing fund.
So with that, is that like carte blanche across all the lenders you use? Is that like you've negotiated this sort of the information that's required, or is it just endemic to La Trobe?
It's not across all products. It is something we have negotiated with La Trobe. We found we've worked with La Trobe for a few years, and we definitely found that there was a lot of back and forth waiting for the loan to be approved, based on waiting for the fund to be set up, and that's where they've really led us to move forward without the new SMSF being established. So yeah, we've been able to negotiate the fact that we don't need to see any contributions into the new fund.
Just as an aside, I mean, it's a bit of a segue there. I know Michael's going to answer another question from Karen as well. Do you think it's possible that, like the Latrobe loan documents, that we could actually put those on the platform?
Oh, I'd never say never. The fact that the documents are done from Purcell's, which is the solicitor they choose, and it's all done electronically, I don't see why that couldn't be integrated in to Lightyear. It's definitely something that I will be talking to them about. That would really streamline everything.
Yeah, if it's electronic, there shouldn't be any drama as well. It's just their precedent. So
exactly.
Okay, perfect. So it's now started to go through. If you just want to go through all the resi stuff, so that people are aware of the fees and the costs, and give us the good news on the rates. And just while I'm on there, I did have a notice. I did have a look through. Didn't matter what location. What happens about regionals and rurals? Yeah,
so the rates do vary. Looking at the rates you've got on your screen, which I'll get to the good news that we've actually got a nice little reduction there. But they do they're just our advertised rates. Whenever we get a deal, we call up. I've got a direct contact with the head of originations with Latrobe, and they will actually confirm the rate to borrower. But for majority of the postcodes we're seeing, they do quote them as the prime rates, or the clear rates, which is the better of the two. Regional, yeah, you do start to see, mainly in the higher LVRs, you'll see that the rates will start to creep up, and with the higher density stuff as well.
You can see that on your chart that we've got up on the screen at the moment.
Yeah, but I was telling Michael this morning that I called Latrobe just for a bit of commentary, just leading in about the landscape within the SMSF industry and the fact that rates haven't decreased. And instead of them giving me a bit of commentary about why that is, they dropped the rates. So that worked out quite well. So I'll make sure that this is all sent through. It literally only happened half an hour before the start of this webinar, but the rates have dropped by 30 minimum of 30 basis points for resi, and I believe 20 to 50 basis points on commercial. So it's not a huge amount. Obviously not as much as what we've seen the standard resi lending drop by over the last couple of years, but it's good that they're starting to pass on some of the rate cuts.
What's the difference between clear and prime?
That's basically prime. They class as 1 to 2 credit events. So where they class as, it could be someone who's discharged bankrupt, or they've had multiple defaults on their CRA. But they class it as if it's all related from one credit event, then it'll fit into the prime. Where we see multiple events, that's where they may start to either load the rate or actually decline the deal. But like I said, I can get on the phone and call Latrobe or our other lending partners to see exactly what they'll do and how that will affect the rate.
Look, I've got a question here from Daniel, which is, I think, in fact, I've got a couple here from Daniel and Raju. Any chance email could find a lender for an LRBA that's got an SMSF balance of only 120K?
Yeah, there's no minimum requirement with Latrobe and one of our other lending partners. They're not like some of the other majors that still have SMSF products where they require minimum balances. As long as they're able to have sufficient equity. I mean, we go up to 80% on the resi property, and then it meets the postcode. So we do see, some of the regional ones where there's properties for say 200,000 or 300,000, they may not be acceptable. But we can always shop it to see if that's acceptable. And then obviously from the compliance point of view, from your side of the deal, which I can't give advice on whether it passes the test for diversification, then we're happy to workshop the deal.
I think it's quite interesting. And I've always argued this is that you have the ASICs and other parties of the world saying, well, originally you need to have 200,000 and now 500. And if I go and have a look at what Daniel's saying, is that effectively we can start off with 100. We've got 20 there in cash, and then obviously borrowing another 400. So instantly my fund goes up to $500,000, even though I've got 100 only up front that I'm rolling in. I've instantly gone up above and met that ASIC threshold, which I think a lot of people seem to miss out on, because it's a great opportunity of building that extra component inside that fund. Now I've got another question here from Raj, and he was saying, if the old fund was receiving 25k super for the last few years and new SMSF is set up, does the bank consider the previous contributions?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as long as we've seen those contributions over that period of time, we don't need to see that the contributions have been made to the new SMSF, as long as we've got that historical data. And again, if they're a wage earner, then we can rely on their payslips to confirm what their contributions are, and yeah, we can look at their tax returns if they're self-employed as well.
So I just switched over to obviously the commercial and the industrial one where you've got up to 2 mil. With the resi, what's the maximum lend on that one?
Well, yeah, the max lend technically is 25 million, believe it or not. Yeah, so obviously the carded rates. Yeah, the carded rates that we have are up to $3 million, and that's at 75% LVR. If you're going to the max 80%, then the max loan is 1.5 mil. So anything above that, we've got to. They don't give us pricing. We've got to go to the lenders to see what they'll do. So yeah, and commercial. I'm just pulling up commercial. I think it's fairly similar. Yeah, 3 million max lend at 75%, and they will go up to 25 mil with a max LVR of 65%. And again, yeah, we've got to get rates quoted for that.
So with a com, they'll actually go up to 75%, will they?
Correct. Yep.
Just as
yeah,
I'll switch around. I know there's a couple of questions as well. I know a few of our guys set up unit trusts for like syndication between, say, for example, Chris, might be myself, you, and Mick. We all put our SMSF in unit trust, so a superannuation unrelated investment trust where no one has control, so it's exempt from in-house assets. If that's the case, obviously that you guys can find a loan process there. What's that loan process for syndication? I've
been a while since I've done a syndicated LRBA, and it's one that it does take a bit of time, but I know La Trobe are open to any of those types of situations. It's one that doesn't fit the standard application. We would need to get them to confirm that they're happy with that structure up front, but it's definitely something we can do.
Okay, I've got another question. What's the minimum loan term for resi and also commercial?
We know minimum loan term. Yeah, so
whatever, and then you can pay it out a lot quicker, I suppose.
Yeah, so I don't know the minimum that we can actually set it up for. Yeah, I don't have that answer to hand, but yeah, I know the maximum, and we can obviously increase the contributions or the repayments in line with whatever they want the term to be. But I'll have to get back to you with the confirmation of what the minimum term is.
Yeah, you generally, I mean, from my perspective, I don't see, you don't see loans discussed in terms of minimum terms. Generally, it'll be,
Maximum.
yeah, to 25 or 30 years, and there's no reason why you can't pay it off in 10 years, or so because it gives you a bit of flexibility there.
And that's exactly how we see it. That to have that flexibility, that in case the strategies change, and if you went for the shortest term possible, if your strategy changed and you needed to increase that, it would be having to do a full internal refinance, which is going to attract some fees, which we always want to try and avoid for clients.
Do either of you guys have on your sites like a SMSF lending calculator that people can just punch stuff in and get indicative monthly payments?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we don't at the moment. It's certainly something we can link in with working with Chris and putting in, and it's a very good point to raise, actually.
We've got our developers working on that at the moment, and it'll also give an indicative servicing as well. At this point, it'll just be inside super, so you'll be able to. If we go forward a couple of slides, there's a bit of an example of what the servicing calculator looks at what info we need. There we go. So we're looking to have that embedded on the I Love accounting site to be able to work out an indicative servicing inside of super.
We've got here Liam, so it's obviously Liam knows all this stuff pretty well. So I believe Latrobe charges a fee, 2-month interest or something if the loan is paid out in the first 5 years.
I am not aware of that fee. Whether that is something that's through the broker market or not, because the fees, there is a discharge fee. I'm just trying to pull that up at the moment, that I believe is around $500, and that's whether it's done in 1 year or in 30 years. So that's my understanding. I'd have to come back to confirm that, but yeah, to my understanding, Latrobe don't have any early payout fees anymore. So that's why they charge a settlement fee up front. There's no LMI, even if it's a 65% or 60% LVR, they do charge that settlement fee, and that's in lieu of charging any early discharge fees.
Yeah, that was my understanding as to the reason the lenders such as Latrobe may have had that in place was broker based, Chris, as well, that in relation to clawback of commissions and things like that. Do we know what
the book is from Latrobe and SMSFs? Do you know the size of their book?
I don't off the top of my head. I know it's on their website. I did see it advertised, but I don't have it up in front of me at the moment. But yeah, I know that the SMSF would probably only equate for probably 10% of their book, if not less. They do a lot of different development finance and low doc finance as well. So, but yeah, hopefully, we're starting to feed a lot through them at the moment. So, I'm sure their book will grow.
Yeah, thank goodness the banks are out of it, which is great. Mick, there's a question from Karen in relation to SMSFs and land tax.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be certainly a strategy I would look at adopting, would be if land tax became an issue, is you could potentially look at the utilisation of multiple SMSFs, but it then comes down to questions on control and how the Office of State Revenue view that in terms of who's actually controlling that SMSF from the trustee's point of view, and because they'll often they can often look at grouping those together and assessing them as one.
Okay, cool. We've got you talked about the servicing. Do you just want to just go over that pretty quickly again, Chris, just to cover the slide?
Yeah, sure. So if we can jump ahead to the it's probably a bit easier just to if we've got the servicing calculator in front of me, if we go back one.
How's that?
Yeah. So, perfect. if we go up one. Perfect. Thank you. So, so what we look at for servicing is we look at the remaining balance that's going to remain in their self-managed super funds. So that can be whether it's managed funds or cash, whatever's remaining, and they actually will rely on 3.9% as an indicative earn for servicing. They then look at the superannuation contributions that we can use. So either looking at their 9.5% contributions, or if they're self-employed, we look at whatever's been contributed average over 2 years. We then look at the proposed rental income for that property, and as well as the fees for the management of their self-managed super fund. So if we're unsure, we put $1,500 a year in there, but if it's higher, we need to put that in. And if we go down one slide, thanks, Grant.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, then this is where we're putting in the required loan amount and the indicative rate, which is obviously assessed at a higher rate. Then it tells us whether it services or not. So this is where if it doesn't service inside super, as I mentioned previously, that's when we can still look at servicing outside of the SMSF. So that's when we need to do a full assessment of their individual situation, including all of their individual liabilities, living expenses, and if they've got sufficient income surplus, we can then rely on additional contributions being made. But obviously, we need that all signed off by an accountant to make sure that fits in with their strategy. But yeah, the La Trobe's very commercial with trying to get a deal across the line if that's in line with what the accountant or advisor has told them for their strategy.
Okay, and obviously there's it seems to me as though you guys are taking a pretty good, will take a good stake in SMSF. Have you seen much of an uptick in your side?
Yeah, it's in the last probably 12 months, it's definitely increased, and that goes against the trend that we've seen some of the lending partners move out of that space, and we've still seen an increase. I suppose for me, I have a few referral partners that have investment that sell investment properties, all over Australia. So we're definitely seeing an uptick of people wanting to look at their strategies inside their super. So yeah, it goes against the trend. So yeah, it's exciting times.
Yeah, look, I think there's only upside. And importantly, we're in that switch in the demos or the demographics between obviously the baby boomers, the back end of those guys at 55, and they're well and truly in their SMSFs. It's going to be very difficult to place a baby boomer into an SMSF these days, given the fact, unless of course they're selling a business. So that next generation coming in, Generation X and Generation Y, the next big parties coming in, and I worked out there's around about $700 billion sitting in industry and retail funds for those guys. So, it will start to go in, and I think that there's obviously a lot of interest in this area, particularly around the property, and of course, if there's a pullback in the share market, it was funny, I did a session last year, and one of the attendees was in an industry fund, and he said he and all his mates, had $1 million each in industry funds, and that, why would they go anywhere else, because it's getting really good returns. And it's funny because they'd only been in it since 2012, and I said, well, you should have seen what happened in industry funds in 2008 and 2009. And any man and their dog can make money in the share market, but at the end of the day, getting that property and knowing that it's in a vehicle that's actually built for long term and having a long term hold, really fits with all the philosophy. So, I'm pretty bullish in that next generation getting into this, and let's just wait and see what happens with the government. So with that, Michael, just want to give your deets and if people want to contact you.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Grant. We, in terms of the Discover SMSF product and any other lending products that we can offer through eMoney and other partners, is that everything has to go through ILA due to the partnership we have in place. So if anyone wants further information, they can contact me, and they can also go through the eMoney link on our website at iloveaccounting.com.au that will link into Chris. And Chris and I speak on a regular basis in relation to any potential deals coming through. And I can assist through that process as well. And I just make sure that everything's done efficiently, and we all work together on everything.
And just a couple of last questions before we let you, Chris. Do the LIB offset account?
We don't have access to a product that has an offset account. I know of one product on the market that it has a pseudo offset account, but we don't have access to that. And I'm still. It hurts my head to try and work out how that exactly works. But there you go. Michael Samu has come to the rescue and told, it is St. George. Yeah, we don't have access to that product at this stage. The rates and fees to us haven't been as competitive, which is why we haven't brought them on panel.
There's also a really good question here from John, is that if you've got a sole member in a fund and they've got like 10 years to retirement or their expected retirement date, would there still be a 25-year loan term offered?
We can still explore a 25-year loan term, and it all goes into whatever their strategy is going to be and what their intention is once they reach retirement phase and they cease to make contributions to the fund. We still explore that, and we can get a letter from a planner or an accountant to sign off on that. At the end of the day, it just has to pass responsible lending to ensure that we're not putting them into hardship if they're close to retirement.
Perfect. What I'll do is I'll close it up there. Just for those of you on, tomorrow I've got my investment strategy, a reprise investment strategy webinar, which follows on from this. So I'm going to be looking at liabilities, borrowing, looking at property diversification, a couple of the little tidbits that we've put in the investment strategy. So if you want to join that, that's at 10 o'clock Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time. You can just jump on to lightyeardocs.com.au and you'll see there's a button there to join the webinar. So I'd love to see you then. But in the meantime, to both Michael and also Chris, thank you for this great, valuable information. And wish this was back in 2007, because the banks have made it so hard. But anyway, we've got it here and now, and so for that next generation, there's some great opportunities. Also, I heard, obviously you've got inroads to dev finance and other stuff like that. So it's good to have that resource within our group. So again, thank you, Michael, and also thank you, Chris. This recording will be up and available probably within the next 2 to 3 hours. You'll get a copy of it. So thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Grant.
Thank you.
Everyone.